so nervous. Oh my God. All right. Don't laugh at me if I make any mistakes. All right? Okay. So my name is Maliha. Can you guys hear me? Okay. So my name is Maliha. I am a writer, creative director, and a student of psychology. And always hungry. So what I do is my work centers on stories and storytelling. I am absolutely passionate about stories, and I believe in their power to shape our lives. And I try to find newer and newer ways of telling these stories. I do that with this obscure little thing called Glyph, where artists of all sorts come together to tell stories. But today, I'm not going to talk about Glyph or any of my work, because that would be foolish to do so in this auditorium full of amazing people and their work. I'm just going to tell you a story, a very personal one, which makes me quite uncomfortable, but it is a story that has shaped my life. This is the story of how I found my home in my homelessness. Now, I am not the most Bangladeshi person in this auditorium. I was born in this small city called Sharjah, in the country called United Arab Emirates. And people normally don't know either of them. They only know Dubai, which is a neighboring city. And I was born to lovely Bangladeshi parents. I had a very humble upbringing with my 3 brothers and sisters. My sister is right there. and we growing up, though I was so small, right? So the world around me just looked big all the time. And everything within my immediate perimeter always looked so beautiful. So my neighbors to my right were Pakistani Punjabis who made the best aloo parathas ever, I kid you not. And the ones on my left were from Tamil Nadu, who were lovely and so responsible that they made us feel ashamed of our own laziness. And the Pakistanis and the Indians, right, they absolutely hated each other, as is expected. They always had problems with each other. But we were cool. We were like the chillest family ever. Because for the, oh sorry, that's wrong one. Okay. So, no, that's a joke that's coming, all right. So for the Pakistanis, right, we were Muslim Bhai brothers. There's no crossing that, like, we're cool. And for the Indians, we were so chill because we knew everything we had to know about the Indians. All of us siblings, we went to an Indian school. Dum dum dum. Like, it doesn't get more Indian than that. You have the word Indian in the name of the school, right? And growing up in the UAE was so nice because we were more than just our nationalities. We were a weird hodgepodge of so many different cultures. So it was like growing up with the entire world, right? Lol, no, wrong. You're wrong. It was not like growing up with the world. You see, growing up in that country, there were a lot of things that I didn't understand back then as a kid. My mother tongue, my family history, my status as an immigrant in a country that could never be my home. I lived in an immigrant's world. See, in my 17 years in UAE, I never had an Arab friend. I grew up speaking 3 languages at the same time, but Arabic was not one of them. Somehow our lives did not overlap. I also never had a white friend, and you know what I mean by white. See, they were expatriates and I was an immigrant. They went to better schools because their papas had the better jobs and they had more money. Now, I may be an isolated case, right? I went to an Indian school, so I didn't have a lot of locals to mingle with. I get that. So let's talk about people who felt very Emirati. I knew a lot of Bangladeshis who knew Arabic better than Bangla. Their moms were born in the UAE. They had never been to Bangladesh. Their families were working for or with Arab families and had their patronage. But ultimately, no matter how Arabized they felt, they could never keep up with the legal constructs of a country that never considered immigrants as one of their own. And I've had to watch a lot of them move back to Bangladesh, even though all they ever wanted was to just build their homes in the UAE. Because UAE was all they knew. It was their image of a home. You couldn't blame them. Not that it mattered. So the reason I'm saying this is because I'm trying to tell you I never felt like much of an Emirati, right? And not even the most Arabized Bangladeshis could make me feel like a Bangladeshi. But that's okay, right? Because I was a Bangladeshi, right? I mean, I couldn't feel like an Emirati, but I was a Bangladeshi, right? No. No. I mean, okay, to an extent, maybe. My parents are Bangladeshi. My passport is Bangladeshi. I grew up eating a lot of Bangladeshi food. But when my mom was too tired to cook, most often we had sausages with rice. We had cheeseburgers for breakfast. And we always had shawarmas for snacks. Like, no kidding. Right? And yes, there was this Bangladeshi community who celebrated major national events in stadiums and parks, but a lot of us kids didn't even know how to read Bangla properly, let alone understand Bangladeshi history or the significance of those events. Yes, we wore salwar kameez to our events, our family events, but in those events, most of the times we talked about how we never wanted to go to Bangladesh because it's so dirty and politically unstable, even though we didn't understand what Bangladesh's politics was at the time. So all of this winds down to this. I never felt like much of an Emirati or a Bangladeshi. And a lot of times uncles go like, "Tomar kothay beshi bhalo lage ma, Bangladesh naki UAE?" And they go like, "Where do you like it more?" I'm like, "What? I don't know." Because I couldn't find a middle ground. No balance, right? There is no balance. I mean, and that's a problem because I don't know where my starting point is. And everybody tells us that we have to start from somewhere, right? We all must have a home. So what happens now? I mean, leave it up to an identity crisis to confuse you as if puberty wasn't bad enough. Right? Now, what helped me here, I think, was some perspective. I mean, I could only tell how homeless I was when I found someone with a home. And here, to offer me some perspective with a home was my father. Now, I don't believe in birthrights entirely. Just because my father is a proud Chadgaya, I don't think I have to necessarily feel the same way. I never grew up in his village or know his friends and families like he did. You can't possibly expect me to feel the same way that he does about it all. But what has always fascinated me about my father is how attached he was to his home. For years, even at the age of 52, even when he was fighting through his cancer, he pushed through his 9-to-5 work every day with this hope that one day he would retire and come back to Bangladesh, to his home, right? He was struggling every day in a foreign land, out of place, for a better life, for his family, for a better future. He was out of place. He didn't feel like he belonged there, just like me, except that he knew where he would finally go to rest, where he would finally go to when he was done with all of this. And in the summer of 2010, when I was 15, we were vacationing in Chittagong in my dad's home, and my father took me and my sister to show us his hood. So he's like showing us around the graves of his ancestors, his first schools, the places where he worked as a young man, his neighborhood. And he shows us this vast stretch of land from a road named after my great-grandfather. And then he says, "Ma, look at this. All of this was ours one day, once upon a time. This is still home. This is where I belong." And that was the moment where I stood there and I thought to myself, this is something I have never known. Like, what is this belonging, right? So at 17, when I just finished my high school, I decided that I was gonna set out and hunt for this thing called belonging, this mysterious little thing called belonging. And it made sense to start from Bangladesh because it was the closest to my mother tongue and my family ancestry. But I chose to stay in Dhaka and not in Chittagong because I didn't think the best way for me to find my home was by staying in a place where everybody wanted to be my uncle, aunt, or husband by virtue of family connections. And I wanted to find my home my way, and I didn't want to go through this fear of hurting someone all the time or feel this sense of obligation. So yeah, it was Dhaka, and I wanted to start from the very basics in a public university with every kind of Bangladeshi I have never really known. And to this day, I don't regret my decision. You know why? Because I've had more adventures than I can keep a track of anymore. I learned to live in the same room with 7 other girls and share a bed. I kid you not. I learned that anarosh helps you lose fever, especially when you're so far away from your mom, all thanks to that kind old man from the canteen. I learned to appreciate history when I wrote my exams in a building that was almost 100 years old, built and used by people I will never know. I learned to tackle bureaucracy and the Dhaka heat in these buildings, and I learned to make useful friends. I discovered Chobirhat, and you guys know what that means. I made some of the most amazing friends of my life with whom I dared to stay out all night on the Dhaka streets. I learned to haggle for 5 taka. And let's not even talk about the time I went to Kushtia and lost all my money. So, and you know what? I discovered that I could possibly be a writer when I got published for the first time at the age of 18. And I found myself discovering all these underground scenes for electronic music, beatboxing, death metal, spoken word, literature, visual arts, full of amazingly talented people who are so passionate about their work, trying to legitimize this passion into real professions. I mean, when I stand here and I tell you that I have had the unbelievable privilege of getting involved with a country's first ever gay theater production, which happened here just in Dhaka just yesterday, by the way, my insignificant existence somehow gets embedded into history. And that's what's happening in a city as chaotic as Dhaka. Every day we are witnessing history with every move we make economically, politically, socially. I made so many bhaiyas, mamas, dadus, chachas, I cannot keep a count of who would be, all of them who would be on my side right now if I called on them. I have learned to love many, and I have been loved by many. I can identify myself across genres, forms, places. But do not get your hopes high, because all of this has nothing to do with home. Like, all of this is nice and this is fun, but I mean, I still wouldn't call Dhaka my home. What are the chances that I would not feel similarly in a different country with a different set of people, right? What this has nothing to do with a sense of belonging. I just found freedom and autonomy in Dhaka, just like any other kid would if they moved to a new city out of their homes. It's just that I didn't have a sense of home to begin with, so I didn't know where to go back to once I got tired of all of these fun and games. Yeah, I mean, I could get some rest, sleep on a bed anywhere, but what makes that room my own, right? And at some point, I just got so tired of moving around, always looking for some special place called home. Like, where are you home? Like, what is this? Where is this home? And at one point that I can't really specify, I just got tired of my whiny, depressed self and went like, okay, now, shut up, Maliha. I get it. Everyone gets it. You don't feel like home anywhere. There is no one special place for you. You're a migrant child. But there are hundreds and thousands of kids who move every year to new places with their families. You are not the only one. So okay, just shut up. Find something to do with this. It's okay. Get to terms with it. And I mean, at that point I asked myself, what is home anyways? Is home about convenience? Is home about a license to draw lines and go like, this is mine and this is yours. Do not even come here. What is this home? In this globalized world where I sit and collaborate with people from 5 different countries on the same day, where our lives are mobile, our works and achievements are literally in the ever so mysterious cloud, sometimes the internet is the home, right? I mean, what is the home? If home is where the heart is, then my memories are my homes. I mean, I love wearing a sari because some of my fondest memories of my mother are from when I used to watch her wear her saris as a kid. Does that make me a Bengali? I still go to that dosa place on Bailey Road and I have my fix of dosa regularly because I used to have it with my family in South Indian restaurants. I speak in Hindi with the Bihari women in Dhaka. Does that make me Indian? I can eat anything dipped in hummus, and shawarmas are the love of my life. Does that make me an Emirati? I don't know. Maybe. Maybe I'm none of it. Maybe I'm some strange new formulation of all three. I don't know. But I do know, in all my homelessness, that I do not have to be one thing, place, or name. And that very knowledge itself changes this idea of home that I have, that maybe home isn't about belonging. Maybe home comes from just learning to accept, right? And when I tell myself that, my home is with every community, ethnicity, culture that I have ever learned to live with, that I have ever learned to love, instead of, to any one community that I could belong to, with every story that I have lived and experienced. And I'd rather be homeless, because then I get to build a new home with every new place and people I find. And I know that there are people who cannot stand when I say Ramadan instead of Ramjan. There are people who think I'm committing treason when I speak in Hindi or Urdu, which is absurd, because that kind of fear makes you forget that Bangladesh is home to people who speak Bangla, Chakma, Marma, Urdu, and more. There are people who fear westernization or cultural fusion. But how can you blame entire generations of children who are just drifting in a void because of economic, political, social crisis that their families are suffering through? And how can we even talk about home in a city like Dhaka, where 500,000 people move every year from all over Bangladesh? This is not, you don't have to be an immigrant or a war-torn refugee to understand this. Where is home for all those daughters, fathers, wives, sons who are moving to big cities like Dhaka all the time for a better life? Now let's say you are born to a family who comes from Noakhali, but you've been born and brought up in Dhaka to the extent that you've never been to Noakhali even once. What does that make you? What does that make you? You've never been to Noakhali even once. And you know what? If a lot of people say that if you're homeless, you're unstable, you're not comfortable, you don't have a resting spot. But it's okay. It's okay. I think I'm speaking. Hello. Hi. Okay. But it's okay. If I'm uncomfortable, you know what? I'm okay with that. I've had a lot of uncomfortable moments in my life that, I'm okay with right now. I'm comfortable with them. It's a special relationship because, you see, in my own little ways, I want to change my world for the things that are important to me. And we sing great songs and praises of great leaders and brave movements. But the biggest decisions we make, I believe, comes from those small, queasy moments of discomfort we face every day. The decision to be honest, the decision to be tolerant, the decision to stand up for someone. Small decisions like these that can make big differences to our so-called intelligent human civilization now more than ever. And I cannot do anything if I'm sitting in a predefined idea of home, feeling comfortable, avoiding these uncomfortable decisions. Now, I'm gonna end with one last story. I promise this is gonna be small. Okay, so in my dorm, there's this girl in one of my neighboring rooms. I'm not gonna name her. And she is not a city girl by birthright. She comes from very humble beginnings. But I have watched her evolve into a city girl as she has struggled to adapt to Dhaka. So I remember at first she used to wear cotton salwar kameez. Then she slowly started wearing trousers, and then tops with those trousers. And then earlier this year, I saw her wearing a pair of shorts she cut out of her jeans in the kitchen. And when I talk to her, I can feel this need in her to be someone that she could never possibly be back home. And one day I was in this internet cafe / pharmacy / studio in my dorm. We have everything in makeshift manners. We're very resourceful. And I was there to get my air tickets printed out because I was taking a plane the next day to visit my family. Now this girl, she walks up slowly next to me to the pharmacy aisle, very slowly. She's very uncomfortable. And after a while, she asks the shopkeeper how much a pack of the cheapest sanitary napkins cost. And the shopkeeper says 80 bucks, 80 Bangladeshi taka. And now she gets really uncomfortable. She's just standing there, shifting her weight from one leg to another. And then after a while, she finally says, Bhaiya, is it okay if I take the pad tonight and give you the money tomorrow? Now, I don't know if you guys know what menstruation is. I'm assuming you guys know it. And what kind of hygiene-related problems it can cause for a woman. But here I was, getting my air tickets printed out while the girl next to me couldn't buy pads for 80 taka. She would have to wait for her money to come the next day on Bikash from her home, back from the village, whatever sum it was. And she'd had no money. She didn't have 80 bucks right there at that time. And I stood there, feeling much, much more uncomfortable at that point, telling myself, asking myself, if I could ever find myself this close to a person like her, socially or physically, if I had chosen to stay back in that luxurious country called UAE, I asked myself if I would have ever known so many different kinds of people, so different, so beautiful, so patient, if I had accepted my house as my home. What are the chances? So you know what? I'm glad that I was born an immigrant child, a migrant child, because right now I travel the world and my home is infinite. Thank you.